Hey guys, before we get started today, I wanted to talk to you guys about a project that Amanda and I have been talking about for a while, and we'd like to start getting some steps forward. And first off, I need to talk to you guys. We're looking at creating a group where foster parents and adoptive parents can come together and talk about some of the struggles that they have and talk about some of the best practices that they found, some of the things that they wish they'd found earlier along their journey. And we want to have a group that creates a lot of value and helps a lot of people do this job better. Helps us to understand what we're doing and create these homes that these kids can thrive in, instead of the homes where our marriages are stretched and difficult and we're at each other's throats because everybody's losing their mind. Because let's face it, this stuff is hard. So if you're a parent who's a foster parent or an adoptive parent, please reach out. Let me know if you'd be interested. It's jason@fostercarenation.com. Just let me know if you'd be interested in doing something like this. I want to create a group where we can do some regular Zoom meetings and we can invite some professionals in, some psychologists, some therapists, that sort of thing, and maybe just see if we can't learn from one another and from the professionals how to do this in the best possible way. Again, if you're interested at all, just reach out to me, jason@fostercarenation.com, and say, I'm interested in the group. Thanks a lot. Now we're on to Maria DiDio. You can forget a lot of things, Foster Care Nation, but never forget this. You're listening to Unparalleled Studios.
I signal.
Foster Care Nation, listen up. This is
Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey.
Strength for the powerless, courage for the fearful, hope and healing for wounded hearts. Hello and welcome back to Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey with Jason. And no, Amanda, she's out doing all the mom things again today. We've got a kid with an appointment and she has to take him to it. So today you have me and Maria DiDio. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Excellent. Anna is an author and a mom who has a story. And since we're all about foster care and adoption here and telling people's story, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you jumped into this and what your books are about?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes. Well, 20 years ago, we had an 8-year-old child, and we were wanting a sibling for that child. So we looked into adoption, and we looked into domestic and international adoption, and decided that an international adoption solution was the best for us. And this was after years of infertility and procedures. And so this was a long process that kind of evolved over those many years. And then when we realized our daughter was 8, we wanted to adopt an older child. So through a set of circumstances, we found ourselves at an orphanage in Mexico, meeting an adorable 6-year-old girl, and started the adoption process and went from there. I decided to write about the process. I wrote a memoir that was published in 2019. And now, a few years later, I'm writing a children's series of books that I'm calling L.I.F.E Adventures series. Life meaning love inspires families everywhere. And I'm focusing on adoption, foster care, and blended families.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned blended families, because as a member of the dad's group that I'm in, that I talk about all the time. One of the call teams we have there is a blended family, and most people see that as his, hers, and ours kids, right? And I went into that call team just kind of wondering what they talk about exactly, and realized how much so many of our families are just so blended. You know, if you look at my family, oh my gosh, like we've got all the colors in our family. You know, we have kids that kind of look like me. We have some a little darker than me, a little lighter than me, a lot darker than me, some that look like my wife, and all the different cultural things that come out of that, the different societal things that come out of that. And, you know, not to mention the biological versus step versus kinship versus,
Exactly.
God knows what placements that we've had over the years. And man, that's a big part of this whole journey, is understanding, the differences and how we can blend all that together to make something amazing.
Yeah, that definition has really evolved over the last couple of years. And I've really just loved that word, because the same things happened in my family with my brother's children. And it's just been kind of a joy to put all this together.
Yeah, because families aren't the traditional that traditional mom, dad, and their biological children anymore. We have so many different things out here in this world where, thankfully, more people are leaning in and taking care of kids that they didn't birth, perhaps, that they may not have any biology towards, but kids who need help, none the different. We've both kind of stepped into that arena. So, what I'm curious, because I have a bunch of books written in my head. I don't have any put down on paper yet. I don't know if you know this or not, but Amazon will not sell the book that you have in your head. So you've done the work to create some books. You've done some author work. So I'm curious, what was that process like for you? How's it affected your family, and how's that really, that journey been for you?
Well, to begin with, just reflecting on how woefully unprepared I think I was for the adoption. I started to journal just what was happening to us. It was a very unique situation, I thought, at the time. We found ourselves at this orphanage, as I mentioned, and it was, you have certain things that come to mind when you're thinking about an orphanage. But this was truly a wonderful place. The children were loved and cared for. The women that cared for the children were called tias, and our daughter, our soon-to-be daughter, was cared for by just a wonderful woman, and they loved each other very much. So the orphanage was in Cuernavaca, Mexico, which is a beautiful place. And so, I tried many times to think. She went to bed in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and the next day, woke up in suburban Philadelphia. And it was just, such a shock to the system. She's a very, to this day, still gregarious and just a high energy, talks a mile a minute. And just to lose all that, as time went on, I just began to focus on all that she had lost. And it just affected me in such a deep way that I started to write about it and wanted to put the memoir together just to track our journey, and how and her journey as well, and how she was able to ultimately reconnect with her culture in Mexico, and she's on her way now to being a wonderful professional woman. She's 26 right now, so it was quite a journey.
Yeah, so you're on the backside of that journey. A lot of the people who are listening here are kind of on the front side of that. They're looking at it, and you see all these stories. Like I've mentioned before, we looked at international adoption before we fell into the foster system, and there were so many things, so many people talking about why it's, the wrong thing to do. And, there's so many kids in America who need a home. Why would you go to another country to do that? And I absolutely just want to find those people and give them a good smack or something, because I might be wrong, but as far as I see it, a kid is a kid.
Kid is a kid, exactly.
A human is a human. It's a human soul that we're protecting and caring for. So that's the way I see it. But man, as you get into that journey, there's a lot to navigate. Did you have any help navigating those waters?
Well, we worked with an agency that specialized in Mexican location, the different states of Mexico. And the rules changed even a lot as we were doing it. I know the rules are totally different now even, but we did have help. And but as I said, reflecting on it, I still wasn't as prepared as I think I should have been. And it was, people and people succumb to that myth of adoption also, that oh, she's so lucky. She's so lucky to have you. And you're such a wonderful family for doing all this. And it was just all wrong in my head. I wasn't, after a prize or anything. And I didn't, we wanted to give a child a family. And as I said, a sibling for our daughter. And the more I focused on it, the more I just wanted her to feel part of us, part of our family. And that took many, many years. That really was a surprise to me how long that took.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about those struggles, because, I know what you're saying. She's so lucky to have you. And they totally, people don't think about, she's not lucky to need me, right? There's a story there. There's a trauma there. What did that journey look like, walking through that for you guys?
Yes. So, and again, this took years of my own, discovery and reading, is that all adoption begins with trauma and loss. And again, I wasn't really focused on that. And in the beginning, I could see, we had a lot of testing behaviors and tantrums and sadness. And after a while, I just wanted to sort of alleviate that pain. I mean, I could just see she was in pain. At first, the natural thing is, it was all about me. I said, why is she, we are a good family. Why is she doing this to me, to us? But, as I began to really zero in on her pain and what she was feeling, we started to search out others that she could talk to, because it's not something that maybe she didn't feel comfortable talking to us. And it was just, again, a really long process, but we trusted others that were professionals, and we went through several stages, one that was more focused on my daughter as a child, then as a middle schooler, then as a teenager. And we kind of went with that because things change, the kids' thought process and thoughts about family, thoughts about where they come from and who they look like, what they sound like, that evolves over time. And I kind of wanted to be responsive to that.
Yeah. Because anybody out there who isn't in the position that we're in, who have had kids across the spectrum and ages, oh my gosh, I'm going to tell you that 14, 15-year-old boy that you have in your house is nothing like the cute little 3-year-old boy that you had some years before that.
Right.
So
as the children's books evolved, so later, I thought, well, what's the best way for families to kind of discover these things together is really to, I don't know, allow that pain, accept that frustration. And I thought if I could write books with some of these behaviors at the center, that parents and children could read these together and discuss that. So the first book is about a young girl from, actually, I have the book set in Colombia. She's adopted from Colombia. I couldn't write any more about my daughter because I thought she would strangle me if I wrote any more about her. It was you said, what was the process like? But the girls thought it was supremely embarrassing to have a book written. I said, well, this was our family experience, and it was just wonderful to write and wonderful to share it with others. But the children's books I see as really opportunities for families to come together to talk about these topics, just a nugget or two of wisdom or behavior that they can share and discuss. So the first book is about acclimating to a whole new family, similar to, inspired by true events, as I like to say.
So this is not just your nonfiction book that boring people like me are going to gravitate towards that boring nonfiction stuff, because that's just who I am. Me too. I'm that guy. And my wife goes, how can you, let's be real honest. Right now I'm reading some works by, I think it's Karen Purvis, The Connected Parent, I believe it is.
Yeah, child or something.
Yeah. I think The Connected Parent is the one I'm really trying to dive deep into right now and understand a lot of the stuff that she's taught, some of the things that we've learned, and diving into that. My wife, on the other hand, is reading a book that has something to do with vampires.
Well, the book, the Primal Wound book by Nancy Verrier really sort of changed my world. As I said, focusing on, my own pain for so long, just made me realize and understand the trauma and loss and separation, and how this begins at a very it begins at separation. So my daughter actually had kind of a double whammy, because she was lovingly cared for in the orphanage till age 6. So she was brought there as a baby, and then developed this relationship, and then had to be separated again. So it was a traumatic event for her, and I really had to work to understand that.
You mean that just because you are a great and wonderful person didn't fix everything for her?
Right. Like, wow, that was just mind-boggling to me. And yes, that was so hard to admit. But and I'm sort of, I wish I had had the realizations a little bit sooner. But so that's really how it evolved into the children's books, just to take those nuggets of wisdom. The second book is called How I Wonder Where You Are. And it's about the same young girl from Colombia, just thinking about, not unhappy with her kind of adopted family, but thinking about where she's come from, of course, her genetic makeup, how different she is from her family, what kinds of things were possibly important to her birth mom. And again, just allowing those topics to be read and discussed together, I'm hoping kind of will just move families forward is really the goal.
Oh, how I wish I would have known that at the beginning of all this, because we were kind of in the same boat. We're going to give this place for kids to do well, to have this good life and all this. And yeah, it turns out there's a whole lot more to it than that. And I was one of those dumb people who thought, like, we can just love them enough, and that'll make everything okay and good. And now, even though we have been through so much, we've had so many experiences and learned so much, I sit with anybody who's listened to the podcast. If you listen to enough episodes, somewhere in there's a couple episodes where I talked with our little guy Turtle, and he is 8 years old now. And that's one of the things we talk about from time to time is what he thinks about in regards to his biological family, because his dad is deceased, and that's a big question mark for him. And I don't have a whole lot of answers for him about who he was or all that. And so I can't give him the answers that he is looking for, but knowing that he's looking for those is such an important part, and making that okay for him. Like, you can wonder, dude.
Exactly.
It's normal. Yeah, I should actually be a little bit more concerned if he didn't wonder.
Yeah. So it's just, the wondering and the acceptance of that, I see as kind of a bridge that's sort of to be traveled by adoptive parents. They need to just accept this. And I know I'm in a lot of Facebook groups. I see a lot of postings about the bio moms, and there's a lot of fear there, and reluctance, but just again, the book is really about wondering what could have been, and I think that's a subject that is very natural.
Oh yeah, I'm curious, who's a book written to audience wise? Is this written for the teen audience to read and kind of validate their experience, or is it written to the more adult audience to understand what their experience is, or is this written from a young to a young kid, so that you're talking to the younger generations?
Initially conceived for younger children, to get the kind of discussion points out there at as early as an age as possible, so that these I think the book, I've officially rated the book as E for everyone. So these are topics that I think that I discussed with my daughter for many years, off and on. This is not something, I never wanted to pressure her to, what do you think? Are you going to look for your birth mom? And these are things that I just let kind of evolve naturally. And but we had the discussion through many years. So I think these topics, it's a good way to bring them forward.
Yeah, it's an amazing way to bring this into the conversation over time, because this is not a one-time conversation.
And so what I've been wondering is, maybe I'll throw this out there. So my experience has been with this international adoption, and through the years we've connected with many therapists and been in adoption groups, but I've not had as much experience with foster children. I do see some similarities with the mindset and where do I come from, and who's my genetics, my biology, and who's taking care of me, what is a family. But to turn that into a children's story, that's really what when I said I was hooked on your podcast. I'm really just fascinated by the journeys of some of the foster families, and looking for those nuggets of wisdom. And if your listeners are wanting to share, I'd love to hear about what lesson or what nugget of wisdom could be boiled down to a children's story about foster care.
Yeah, I think the one thing that comes to mind immediately is just the question mark that looms there, because these kids not only have that same primal wound, being pulled from their first family, but they don't have even an adult who can tell them that this is your permanency right here. You have found your permanency now. They are still living in limbo. We've had kids who have stayed with us. I think the longest foster placement we have had has been about 1.5 years. And the shortest was less than 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
And now in the short one, I mean, let's just be honest. That one, we were in emergency placement. There was something that happened. There was law enforcement involved, and they removed the kids from the situation. I don't even know any of the story. I could barely even tell you one of the two kids' name, because we never actually learned the little boy's name. The little girl, we got her name from her, and her little brother was too young, so he was still fairly nonverbal. And so, we didn't get his name. And then the very next day they found a family placement, and they went to stay with a family member. So, that was the way it should have been, right? We were just a warm bed and a roof and a safe place where they could spend the night with some weird strangers for just a minute, and then they moved on. But the thing is some of these kids come and they stay for a week, a month, 6 months. You just never know. As a matter of fact, is most of the listeners will know that you won't hear her today because she's with Amanda, but we have had baby girl staying with us now for the last, I think, 8 months. And sometimes you'll get to hear her making cute baby noises in the background. But her story's not written yet. We don't have an answer for what her long-term story will be. And for her, because she's 8 months old, she doesn't really care. But when you bring in a kid who's 6 years old, who's going to a different school now, who has to deal with all new, kids, they lost their friends, they lost the teachers they knew and trusted. And so now they're in this completely brand new situation. Wasn't it? I think it was a Mel Gibson movie. I could be wrong. I'm horrible with movies and actors, so I can't remember even the name of the movie. But it was, the idea was, what do you get the man who has everything for his birthday? And they had this whole experience where he was more or less kidnapped and thrown into Mexico, and he had to figure out how to get back home. And it was this whole experience that you look at that idea and you think that's what this is. They were, in their mind, picked up out of their home and thrown into a world they know nothing about, and now they live in a world of nothing but uncertainty. And, psychologically speaking, that's what sparks the amygdala, that fight or flight. And then they begin to live in that, because I don't know anything about the people here, the places I'm going, the school, the food I'm eating. If you come out of a home that feeds all prepackaged, easy, hostess type foods, that's always readily available because it doesn't require much effort to cook. And that's just what that family does. And now all of a sudden you get thrown into a home where people are trying to feed you vegan meals. You're probably going to have some real resistance there. And I don't blame you, because I know what I like to eat, and I don't want that to happen to me. But all those uncertainties get thrown into one place, and my gosh, and we expect the kids to be grateful that we have a place, that these kids, people say that all the time. Oh, aren't these kids so lucky that you do this? No, man, we do the best we can, but at best, we get a B minus C plus rating, and if these kids, some of these kids were to leave a Yelp review on us, I mean, my gosh, their perception has to be so different, and it's constantly changing. I think that's a real hard part for kids who are in the foster system, is just that lack of consistency.
Yes, that's but some of the same challenges around. I'll just name something that I've read that's the same challenges around the child's birthday, for instance. That brings up a lot of issues for adopted children and perhaps foster children as well. Just thinking about expectations. What are expectations about a birthday? Who's thinking of me on my birthday? And so that's just one of probably a gazillion challenges that they face.
Oh yeah, in my house growing up, at least for a lot of years until one of us broke it, there was a plate that hung on the wall. It said, "You are special today," and on your birthday, you got to eat off the "You are special today" plate. And that was just one of those little things that was just a tradition in our home. And you lose all those traditions.
Yeah, so important.
Even if it just means that's the day that, that your parents spend a little bit of time and energy with you that you maybe don't get during the rest of the year. It's those pieces and parts that you lose, that it's all part of the traumas that we experience as we walk through these experiences together. We're trying to help these kids, find that normalcy. And man, it's hard. It really is.
My daughter had been, of course, acclimating to a family was very different. But I thought, oh, isn't this wonderful? When we didn't speak Spanish. At some point, she said to us, "Why did you adopt me if you didn't even speak Spanish?" And someone asked her what she thought of her, new family setting and surroundings. And remember, she was living, the orphanage had a pool and about 30 to 40 kids, and they were young. So boys and girls were kind of together. And can you imagine having like 30 to 40 kids to play with at any one time? And when someone, we had a neighborhood get together and someone asked her, how she was doing. And she said she was bored in our house because there was only one other kid to play with. And I remember being so surprised, like, bored, what? And, you just, in her mind, of course, all her friends were taken away. And I thought, oh, geez, of course, this is just torture. And then my biological daughter, she was just in tears because she thought our newly adopted daughter was getting all the attention. She had been an only child for those 8 years and had a little trouble recovering from that. So each family goes through these, growing pains and formations, and it really is a balancing act.
Oh yeah. She came from Mexico, and with a name like DiDio, I'm going to assume there's some Italian heritage. So going from eating a lot of primarily Mexican food, if she's living in Mexico, to dealing with an Italian American diet is probably just one of those big switches. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're an expert in Mexican cuisine. You may be, for all I know, but no. Yeah. So there's those changes. And then, the cultural changes from just being in an orphanage to your home, and then having a bio daughter in the house who she probably at some point, I'm going to guess, felt like she was the less than between the two, while your daughter feels like, your biological daughter feels like, maybe I'm not enough, and they had to bring this other kid in. These are some of the conversations we've had with some of our older kids now that they're young adults and can really understand where they were in those moments. So have you guys dealt with that with your girls?
Yes. So, within 6 months or so, she lost her Spanish. And the transition was very quick, and learned English. As a matter of fact, we had to travel back to Mexico twice to complete the adoption. And by then she really wasn't speaking. That was part of the challenge. She really wasn't speaking Spanish anymore. And because she had come to live with us, and it wasn't really before she was really designated. So we kind of skirted adoption rules a little bit. But as the years, passed, she wanted to learn Spanish. That's one of the things that I focus on in the memoir. And we tried to support that through, tutors and of course her own efforts. But it wasn't until really that she was in high school when she started to go to Spanish regular classroom instruction. And I could see, and then through Facebook, I could see that she had connected again to those from Mexico that she knew as a child. And by the time she was in college, had completely recovered her Spanish. And, something happened at that point. It was just a noticeable increase in her confidence and her awareness. She traveled back to Mexico in a study abroad program and reconnected with the women there. And I just, rejoiced and embraced all of that as a way that she was, kind of like discovering herself all over again. We wanted to support that as much as possible.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna have to say that that's awesome that you guys look at it that way, because I mean, it's really easy to put the past behind you and just let's move on now with this amazing life that we're going to create for you, and forget that there's a place where everybody comes from, and it's not always from our home, our culture, our life, our language. And it's, for these kids who have had so much taken from them, to support her reconnecting with that. Because now does she have any connection with her biological parents?
No, just the women from the orphanage have maintained contact all these years, and we've been back as a family to visit them as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, but on a note about the Italian thing, that's one of the things mentioned in the book. For whatever reason, Mexican, Italian, cheese, some pasta, it was all there. But every time I made anything ravioli, she would just spit it out. It was just, I don't know whether it was the texture or what, but we couldn't have tacos every night. So, she would love, and of course now she likes things very hot and spicy. And of course I don't, but every time I made anything that had either like a tortellini or ravioli, she would just spit it right out. And it was somewhat hilarious, but I would just think, but one of those transition items.
Yeah, because, my kids actually like a lot of spicy food, and I'm like, nope, no thank you. As a matter of fact, at one point, my boys, we'd gone on a little trip here inside the state for something, and we stopped somewhere, and they got a couple jars of this hot sauce stuff, and like, all right, whatever, yeah, I'll buy it for you, if you'll eat it. And they wanted it because it's this cool thing. And I remember we actually stopped at a Taco Bell on the way out because we get some quick food. And my son, the younger of the two that was with me, he takes a little bit of this stuff, and he makes this whole big scene about how spicy it is. And me and the older son, we were laughing at him quite hard, actually. It was hilarious to watch him. And then he's like, you don't understand. I'm like, here. I hand one of our, very not spicy Taco Bell tacos back. I was put some on there, and he stuck a glob on there. And I'm not going to lie, I ended up on the shoulder of the road trying to decide if I could figure out how to dial 911 because I couldn't breathe any longer.
Oh my gosh.
And, yeah, come to find out, it's actually one of the hotter ones out there. I think it's called The Bomb, and there's a YouTube show out there called Hot Ones, where the guy he goes through this progression of, I don't know, 10 or 12 different hot sauces with people, and does a whole interview, and it's amazingly interesting to watch. There's one episode with Gordon Ramsay, which is hilarious, and I feel so much better after watching these people like die out, trying to do the same thing. I'm like, no wonder this kid was actually trying to kill me, I think. But that's a big part of it. Like, our tastes are different. It's just totally different. I have one little boy who, anytime we have green beans, oh my gosh, it's World War III started all over again. And I'm sorry, but we have green beans in the house, and you're going to have to eat them once in a while. But that taste and texture thing is so difficult, especially with a kid who comes from a place where there's some foods that they're not used to eating.
Well, just the whole, transition from Mexico, it's actually never really stopped, but Mexico's always in the news. And in the beginning, when the journey was, in the beginning, she cried almost nonstop for a couple months and just throwing huge tantrums, just begging to go back. And so I used to just, of course, watch the news and read about Mexico. And I used to cut out items from the paper. And now I refer to them as, resentment coupons. I would cut out a notice about, there's poverty in Mexico, the violence, just the lack of overall opportunity. And so I clipped all these things over a couple of years, and as we sort of evolved as a family, and wanting to save these articles as evidence. See how good you have it with us. Why are you acting like this? How come you don't love us? And I used to clip these things, put them in a little folder, and thought, oh, I'm going to show these to her someday, and just she'll see how lucky she is. And this was all in the beginning, and gradually, when all of this sort of evolved, and reading Primal Wound and talking with the therapist, and years later, I found this folder of all these resentment coupons, and I thought, oh my gosh, how could I have done that? I threw them out, and they never saw the light of day. And it was just such a huge lesson to just meet, her where she was at that point. And I'm so glad I didn't show her those things, because the process happened so slowly. I was just too impatient. And I don't know if you found that, but it was also new for me. But I think with the help of others, you eventually get there.
Yeah, I'm pretty ready for my perfection to be seen by all the kids. And once you think that you have some of that perfection to hand to these kids, I promise you, they will let you know that you don't have perfection. Anybody who has kids, especially teenagers, you'll figure out pretty quick how far from perfection you are. They'll let you know if you missed it.
Yes. But, we your parenting styles, of course, have to adapt and change. And as the kids get older, and the girls used to take, when they both had phones, used to take pictures of the clothes that they would take from each other's room, and then post themselves on Facebook or something. And, and, there are all kinds of, their relationship has sort of ebbed and flowed over the years. They're extremely different. They're very, very different personalities. So it's funny because in the beginning we were looking for a sibling for our daughter, and it just evolved as they're not really close, but I'm hoping that will evolve over time as well. I don't know how your sibling group kind of ebbs and flows, because you have many more in your household, but eventually I'm hoping they'll get a little bit closer.
Well, I'm not certain if we actually got siblings or if we just brought the rivalry part in some days. Because even our two younger boys, who it's kind of, it makes me laugh because of all the way that culture acts and reacts about certain things. And we have got our youngest little guy. This poor boy is so pale white, it's hilarious. And his brother, who is Frank, I think they're a year and a half apart. And, his next older brother he's mixed, and he's very, very dark complected, and he has his hair braided down. He has totally different hair, and they look so different. And then to see them in those brotherly moments, they know no difference between two. That's so close of a bond. And then there's and then there's all the I hate you moments, right?
Right.
There's a lot of those moments that come in. And as parents of also biological siblings, that's pretty normal there too. So I don't know that you can create siblings without some level of rivalry, and it's probably a healthy thing that it's there.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, so So yeah, I take comfort in that as well with the biological sibling groups that I see, because it's really a matter of individual personalities, and you don't know who's going to mix. You just don't know.
Yeah, we have a lot of those interesting mixtures, and sometimes it creates a wonderful mixture, and sometimes it's an amazing chemical reaction that looks like you're trying to create a volcano. So yeah, it's wildly interesting, and you know, fortunately for us, all the girls that we have and have had in our family are at least a decade apart, so we have no clothing fights at all.
Oh wow, that was very smart.
I'm not going to say it was smart; it was just fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, because brothers fight a lot less about that sort of stuff. Now they fight a lot more for fun, I think. And well, I told this story not too long ago, but they were outside playing, and when they came, you know, one of them comes running in and screaming and hollering, and we go outside to see what it is that was broken. And I get one kid calmed down, and he says, "We were just playing a game." So what kind of game, bud? He says, "Well, whoever gets hit with a rock 20 times first dies."
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like that was the game. Turns out the window did not play, the car window did not play by the rules. It only took one, I think, to for it to die, and we had to manage that. But that's how boys play. So I'm not certain if it's better to deal with girls fighting over clothes or boys throwing rocks at each other for fun.
Well, did you find that you used children's books for I don't know, lessons or discussions, or were they jumping off points for some of the things you'd like to talk to your kids about?
Honestly, when we first started this whole thing, no. I mean, we were your classic, like we're going to love them and it's going to be all good and fine and dandy because we've always had kids in our house, whether they were, you know, ours, steps, half family, and then we started into the foster system. You know, it was just, we just knew what we were doing. Turns out we didn't know what we were doing. And as we have walked this process, we do have, you know, we have I'd love to say we have a huge library of books for our kids, but a library suggests they're all put together nicely on shelves. We have piles of books around the house. And in those piles, you'll find quite a few books now that because they've become much more available, books about kids in foster care, books about adoption. And it has led to a lot of stories. And, you know, there's a lot of those big stories out there that we don't think about so much, but like the whole Harry Potter series.
Right.
Is a young boy who lost his first family, you know, who more or less is in that place, and we use a lot of those stories as well. You know, the Superman paradigm, he was pulled, you know, away from his family, and his first family is gone, and now he's being raised by these people in the middle of was it Kansas?
Right. Well, there's a chapter in my in my memoir. Well, at one point I go on a rant, but of course, the play, when both of our girls were in elementary school, and the school play that they put on was Annie. And so my biological daughter gets the part of Annie. And of course, and then my younger daughter, literally a year out of, not even a year out of the orphanage, she's on stage, like swinging a broom, was singing Hard Knock Life. And it was just too much sitting there like, looking at this. And, you know, you name it, Harry Potter, Cinderella, and what was the other series of books? The American Girl dolls. Half those characters had a parent that was missing. And it's a very compelling story that I think any number of Disney characters are jumping off points and lessons for kids.
Absolutely. And that's why I love finding people who can and are willing to write those fiction books aimed at kids to normalize these things.
Yes. And in some of those books, of course, you know, love does fix everything. I think there's not I'd like to see a little bit more realism, but it's a valuable lesson to have out there. So I'm glad there's plenty of examples.
Yeah, most of those books don't mention the fact that a lot of times the traumas lead towards things with diagnoses like ADD, ADHD, ODD, RAD, all the good acronyms that I think the vast majority of us, if we don't face it in our own home, we have a close friend who does face some of those things.
Right.
And that needs to be something that's also brought more to the forefront, that neurotypical kids are not typical. I forget the numbers, but it's a ridiculously high percentage of families who deal with some version of one of those diagnoses or another. And most of the kids who are adopted or have been through the foster system have a lot of those issues that they deal with because the traumas that are caused by people outside of that kid's control. It's things that are foisted upon them, and we don't necessarily always do a great job of showing that side of it. Right.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, your story is amazing. I love that you're bringing this out in book form and talking to people and telling your story and helping to encourage other families. What would you say to someone who is at the beginning of their journey looking for some advice on how to step into this and do it the right way, whether it's international adoption or domestic, whatever, but to do it in the right way?
Well, I mean, you mentioned stories. I would say that's really something that I can't emphasize enough. Read stories about actual families, experiences, solutions, strategies. Be acquainted with other families that are going through some of those same things, and then get in touch with professionals when you're faced with a situation that you're not able to cope with. So it's really a sequencing, but initially, though, information is key. And information just helps to normalize and helps families strategize how they're going to deal with certain situations. But reading stories about kids and their circumstances really helped me.
I can only imagine it did, and I wish I'd done more of that in the beginning. We were more of the classic, we're gonna make this all work thing, and that'll work if you're willing to learn as you go down the road. So I'm glad to see that you have learned a lot of those lessons and you're passing those lessons on to others.
We were a little bit late to the party, but I think that's really the goal of writing the children's books, is to just put these topics in front of as many parents as possible.
Well, if anybody wants to find Anna Marie's books, if you go to our website, there's at fostercarenation.com, there's a tab on the top on a computer. I think it's under the little menu button on mobile that will have some book resources there, and her book will be listed there. You can go to Amazon and find it. What's the name of the book to search for to find it on Amazon?
Many People to Love.
Many People to Love. And
the memoir is called L.I.F.E at the Border, an adoption adventure.
There you go. And if you want to find Anna Maria, it's amdidio.com, as in Anna Maria DiDio. So amdidio.com. You can find her website and you can find her there. You're on Facebook and Instagram a bit. I know we talked a little bit before. You're kind of like me. The social media may not be the place where you are at all the time, and especially Instagram, because you're old people like me. Nothing against you, except that apparently if you don't have the word teen in your age, you're not on Facebook, and only old people on Facebook. At least that's what my teens tell me. But I think that's the better place to be. But maybe that's just because I'm old. But you can find her there and research the books that she has. This is a series you have coming out. Is there more books coming?
Yes, the one about the biological connections, How I Wonder Where You Are. And then there'll be another one probably about just reading, writing in school. And then I'm going to try and transition to foster care. And that's why I'm seeking any of your listeners. There's my email address is on my website. Write to me if you'd like me to learn or talk about, as I said, nuggets of wisdom. I'm listening to podcasts, reading, and formulating ideas for that next book.
Yes, because there are a lot of us out here who can tell you all kinds of things about the foster system. That's what we do, right? That's why we hold this space, because there's a lot of stuff to be learned, and we're trying so hard to get get the information from people in story form a lot of times out there so that people can connect with stories. The story format is the most powerful format I've found so far.
Yes, I agree.
It's how we have as humans have been communicating for probably millennia. If you go back far enough, you'll find all the old cave paintings that are, it's the original picture book, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it'll be
stories come alive. Stories make it come alive, and we identify with families and stories.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the powerful part. So, if you guys are interested in what Anna Maria has to say here, I mean, I know at some point in the very near future, I'm going to be doing a quick Amazon search, because these are the books that I think are beneficial for parents like us who have kids who are either in the foster system, to have these books laying around, or if you have kids who are adopted through the foster system or adopted in general, to have these books around and things you can read with your kids to normalize that. Because I know that I have interviewed more than one person who has told their story of having been in foster care or been adopted, who felt like they were the only one in their whole entire school who knew anything about this, and they tried to hide it because they were the one unique one. Nobody else dealt with this stuff. And one particular gal that we talked to, she talked about a young man that she mentored who was in a school that she was working at. And when she created a support group, there was, I think it was 6 or 8 different kids in the school at the same time who had all been in the foster system, and created this little support group. And these kids came together and were able to create that community. And that's what we really want to do, is have this community where these kids can really identify with another human and not feel like they're the only ones who is left out in the world and they're unique and unworthy.
I love that. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Anna Maria. And we'll make sure that links to the book and the website and the social media and all that end up in the show notes. So, you guys can look down on your podcast player there and get it there. If you go to the website at fostercarenation.com, and you listen to this episode there, the show notes will all be there as well. I want to make certain that we always let everybody know that it's there, because the one big one that everybody likes to listen to, Apple Podcast, for some reason or other, there is something that goes on sometimes, and the links in the show notes don't always work. So if you want to find it and you can't find it on Apple, just go to go to our website and you can find all the links in there. And one of these days I'll get around to getting a hold of some human from Apple who can fix all my problems. But until then, we're just going to work around it. Well, Anna, I do want to just thank you one more time for having spent some time with us today and talking about your story, your experience with your daughter. It sounds like it's something that has been very valuable to you and to your family, and in the long run, to her as well. Yes, I hope so. I think so. And I'll keep writing. We'll be looking forward to it. Thank you so much. Okay, Foster Care Nation. Thank you for listening to Anna Maria's story. Now take her knowledge and wisdom to heart so you can create love and healing in your family and community. Be sure to come back next week. We have new episodes every Tuesday. If you would like to share your story as a guest, you can reach us at jason@fostercarenation.com. You can connect with other like-minded people on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/fostercareuj. And don't forget, we have a Patreon account where you can support our mission for as little as $5 a month. It's at patreon.com/fostercarenation. The links to everything are in the show notes in your podcast player or at fostercarenation.com. And as always,
you are so super awesome. I think you guys are cool. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thanks.
Unparalleled Studios. I wanted to talk to you guys about a project that Amanda and I have been talking about for a while, and we'd like to start getting some steps forward. And first off, I need to talk to you guys. We're looking at creating a group where foster parents and adoptive parents can come together and talk about some of the struggles that they have and talk about some of the best practices that they found, some of the things that they wish they'd found earlier along the journey. And we want to have a group that creates a lot of value and helps a lot of people do this job better. Helps us to understand what we're doing and create these homes that these kids can thrive in, instead of the homes where our marriages are stretched and difficult and we're at each other's throats because everybody's losing their mind. Because let's face it, this stuff is hard. So if you're a parent who is a foster parent or an adoptive parent, please reach out. Let me know if you'd be interested. It's jason@fostercarenation.com. Just let me know if you'd be interested in doing something like this. I want to create a group where we can do some regular Zoom meetings and we can invite some professionals in, some psychologists, some therapists, that sort of thing, and maybe just see if we can't learn from one another and from the professionals how to do this in the best possible way. Again, if you're interested at all, just reach out to me, jason@fostercarenation.com, and say, I'm interested in the group. Thanks a lot.